Oh, good.
All right, good to go.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. It's Chris here in the studio again. And today, Sarah is here with us as well. And we're going to be bringing Sarah from behind the controls for a little bit. And we're going to be talking about things to do to put your snow blower away at the end of the season so that it'll be ready to go for next year. Now, there's two ways of putting your snow blower away. And lots of people, actually, putting away your snow blower generates a lot of discussion amongst people about snow blowers. Because there's two ways to do it. One, you just push it somewhere out of the way, in behind the house, under the deck, or in the shed, or your garage, or just park it off to the side, maybe throw a tarp on it, maybe not. A lot of people do that. Then they have to deal with it in the fall and decide what they got to do to try and get it running. Or they get caught short because they get a snowstorm and suddenly now they need to go to work. Or the way I prefer to try and do it is at the end of my season when I'm going to put it away, that's when I'm going to go and do a general look over of all the features and functions of the machine, look at the adjustments and normal wear parts, and either fix anything that's wrong, lubricate what needs to be lubricated, or make a list of parts that I'm going to need in order to get the thing ready so that next season, next winter, all I need to do is go out and start it instead of having to try and stand here in the snow and fix my blower so that I can try and clear the driveway. So today we're going to go through this old job and take a look at what condition it's in and what things we're going to look at in order to make sure it's going to be up and ready for next year.
Perfect. So unlike last time, I'm not doing everything. So we've got the beginner DIY person and the repair expert who's going to walk us through it all.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask all the questions that you guys have.
Well, that's fair enough. I've probably used the snowblower considerably more than you have.
I have underground parking.
There you go. There you go. You got me. I've had snowblowers for years and years, and I've done everything the wrong way that you could possibly do. So I've kind of learned the right things to do. So, and looking at this old dog of a snowblower, it's a great blower. It runs really well. It does everything it should. It just looks like crap, and it looks like crap because whoever had it, when they put it away, they didn't do anything. They didn't cover it. They didn't put any protectant on it. It just turns into a rust bucket.
This is like if you don't store your barbecue properly in the winter, but
Yep.
the reverse season version.
Yeah, same idea. So ideally what we want to do today is, again, just go through this machine, take a look at it to see if there's anything that we need to address so that next season, all we have to do is pull it out and either fuel it up or start it up and be able to go blow snow without any hassles or any problems. So we want to talk about first thing, and this is again another big two-sided story with people who have snowblowers or small engines as to, do we put it away with a full tank of fuel, or do we put it away with the gas tank dry of fuel and drain the carburetor out? So two schools of thought. One is they prefer to leave the tank full, put some fuel preservative in it, and have it ready to go come the winter time. Main reason is that it keeps everything nice and lubricated as far as in the carburetor. You wind up with none of the seals really drying out, not getting the crack and splitting, and makes the initial startup much easier. The other way is you're going to drain the gas out and as much as you can, and then you're either going to run the machine dry, or you can actually remove your cover on your carburetor. Not remove the cover to show you this, but this particular machine, this carburetor is a spot right here on the bottom of the carburetor with a bowl, and this is what of your carburetor where the fuel was being stored for usage. There's a little push button right there that you can push, and that'll drain the fuel out of it.
Yeah.
Clean
So,
that up later.
yeah, that'll evaporate or whatever, but it makes it really easy. If you do want to have it completely drained, that you can drain that hole out, and then you're not gonna have to worry about the gas turning to gel and dumping everything out. Also, by taking this cover off, we can actually see our primer hose to make sure it's not cracked or split. Because if that primer hose is deteriorating and it's cracked or split or has a hole in it or where they rot and fall off, when you go to prime it, they start it, nothing happens. So you can wind up just pulling your arm off trying to get it to start. So just check and make sure that's it. And talking about starting, so these usually come with either, well, they always all have a full start. Some models actually have an electric start as well. So you just take an extension cord, plug it in, hit a button on top, and it rolls the engine over.
Does this have a battery or there's no, it's all
No,
mechanical?
it's mechanical. It would mount on the side of the engine, and you would just take a small extension cord, plug it into the house, plug it into the starter, push a button, and it rolls the engine over, so you don't have to pull it. And those work pretty good. This machine had one at one time, but it doesn't have it any longer. Because one of the things that happens with these is where they bolt onto the side of the engine, over time and lots of use, those bolts will loosen up and the starter kind of vibrates and it winds up actually damaging the threads the screws go into. And so your starter falls off, which is not the best situation, of course, but the tricky part is if it damages those threads and they're right in the block, they're a little bit difficult to fix. You need to put some inserts and stuff like that in. I like to make sure my snowblower is go to start with the pull cord. So one of the things I want to do before I put it away is I want to pull that cord out and I want to inspect it to make sure it's in good condition, that it's not frayed or split. If this is worn, I'd much rather change it now while the weather's still half decent than have to turn around in the middle of a snowstorm and try and get my starter off and put a new cord on. So just inspect it, make sure it's in good condition. It's not frayed. It's not any area where it's going to show signs of wear, possibly break when you pull it. And I like to be sure that when I put it away, I can just pull this with one or two pulls, and that engine's going to take right off. If it doesn't, I want to find out why and get it addressed now.
So what do we have done to the machine? So that didn't start?
No.
Or mower?
No.
Or not mower, it's a snowblower?
No.
That's next week, guys, mowers.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, so this one hasn't started. I don't have it set up in position to start, but I do, like I said, I want to pull that starter cord out and inspect it. And if I can have it start with one or two pulls, then I know if I go to use my electric starter, if this one had it, it's going to flash up right away. So I don't have to worry about it. The other thing I'm going to look at doing is I'm going to want to replace my spark plug. Now there's two schools of thought on spark plugs. Don't change them until they break, or for the price of spark plug, put a new one in it every season, and then you'd never have to worry about it being a problem. So we're going to throw a new one in this, Sarah.
All right.
If you want to just pull that cap off.
Okay. Never changed the spark plug before either.
There you go. So this is one version of a spark plug wrench.
Okay.
So you shove it down on top, and it's just regular.
Just that's all it is, just right, or does it need to get further in there?
Yeah, it might have to.
Oh,
There you
okay,
go.
perfect. And then
it's just like any other bolt. It's ready to get loose.
that's all we're doing?
Yeah.
How do I know when it's?
It'll just come right up.
Oh, cool.
There you
Okay,
go.
that is very easy.
Yeah.
So it's all black and let's see if I can get this in the cameras for.
So there's a lot you can check by looking at your spark plug.
Can I touch this?
You sure
Okay.
can. Yeah, you pull it right over there. You get it? So you can inspect that electrode, and that will tell you a lot about how your engine's running. If it's wet and oily, like wet with fuel, your carburetor is running too rich. If it's oil covered, then you maybe have a problem with the rings. And if it's all sooty, like this one is, it may be that the carburetor still needs some adjustment. So you just want to take your new plug, You just want to take the feeler gauge and gap it to what it's supposed to be for this engine, and your owner's manual has that. And that is set just about right.
Do they, when you get a brand new spark plug, is it already have a little bit of a gap, or does that need to be adjusted every single time?
That's a really good question. They come pre-gapped. It's good to check it to make sure it's not gotten set for a different type of engine. The other thing that happens when they're in the box is sometimes they get bounced around and that tip will get tapped and it may squeeze it together. And if it's too close, you don't get a good arc, you don't get a good spark, so it doesn't start as easy or it doesn't run as strong as it should. So for the little bit of time it takes, just check your gap. If it's good, then you can just go
Where's
back
the
in.
old one, just for
Oh, there's the old one right
a, okay, there's quite a difference in color. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, old versus new.
Yeah.
So
there.
old
Ideally,
dirty guy.
ideally a clean running engine with the right air and fuel settings that's been used for a number of hours, wide open throttle. That should almost be a tan color. So that one's obviously running a little bit rich. See a little bit of difference in winter use because of the cold air, the cold fuel, that they'll run a little on the dark side compared to your lawnmower.
So I just drop this in and then tighten it
Yep.
up?
Yep.
Okay, and then this part goes
Yep.
down, okay. Like that?
Yep, just thread it in. Just a little bolt. It should go easy. If it's not, then it's not quite. There you go. Perfect.
And then still use this to tighten it up, or? Okay.
Push that down on there.
It's not going anywhere, is it?
Yep, well, that's good. So we'll get a little tighter. Just drop that down so that you've got something to pull with.
The tools?
Yep. So that's not, that part's not expensive, and for the amount of time it takes to change it, it's pretty quick and easy. And you know, come wintertime, when you want to use your blower, it's going to be ready to go and you're going to get a good spark. The other controversy we have with snow blowers is changing the oil. Do I change it before I put it away for the season? Or do I wait and change it when I bring it out to use it in the wintertime? In my experience, I used to change it when I bring it out in the fall, getting ready for winter. But I use synthetic oil now, and pretty well every machine's being run with synthetic oil. The synthetic oil does not break down like the usual SAE motor oil. There's not the impact of moisture deteriorating the oil. So I typically do it when I put it away. So we'll change the oil in this guy, and doesn't take long to do, and makes a world of difference to it. So you up for an oil change?
Let's give it a go.
All right. So this one's pretty easy. We'll just go to put the drip pan down here, and this is where the oil drains out. Just get a wrench. You want to do this one?
Maybe, okay. So what am I doing here?
Get the wrench. And just push it down because it's the same thing. It's really tight, not too greasy.
I'm gonna get a shirt with that on it.
Yeah. A buddy of mine has that as a tattoo. There you go.
Is that supposed to come all the way off?
Yeah. It'll loosen up and then you can take it off.
Maybe. You guys get to see me doing this. Oh my God, it's not real.
No, okay.
Okay.
The adjustable wrenches can be real pain in the butt. Okay.
Nope. Okay.
Little stuff. What else did I shoot over there?
Ooh, delicious. Okay.
Well, I don't know if you guys can see that, but that oil is really on the dark side. I don't think that oil's gonna change for quite a while.
Does that explain why the spark plug was so dark as well?
No, that would have more to do with the fuel mixture. Just going to loosen the fill cap on this one. Now this engine.
There it goes. It's low in there now.
Yeah. So by taking the dipstick out, I'm actually allowing air to enter the engine block, so it allows that oil to flow a little easier. Now, a lot of these snow blowers have the dipstick up here, and there's a tube that would go from here down. This particular model is a base model, and it doesn't have it, which makes it a little bit more cantankerous to refill, but we have a funnel for that. Here, sort of loosen. Now, of course, anybody who's changed their oil knows ideally the best way to do this is to have the engine running so it's a little hotter so that the oil warms up and flows out much quicker, much easier. But this oil's so old and thin, it's coming pretty good.
It's pretty balmy in here too.
Yeah, yeah, this machine's been inside all month, so. It's got it.
This is for the actual fuel, right?
Yeah.
Oh, down here, is
Yeah.
where the oil
Yeah.
goes into? Okay.
So we'll have to use a little bit more oil.
So if we were gonna put like fresh fuel in for storage,
Mhm.
do we wanna drain the oil and then drain the fuel and then fill everything up again? What's the order of operation here?
You can do your fuel and oil as separate as whichever one you want to go with first.
This is like a lawnmower, we gotta like tip something over to get the fuel out.
Not so easy with snow blower. You're right, lawnmower, you can just tip them over. These ones you either have to use like this, a siphon hose to suck the fuel out. And then wind up, drain the fuel over the carburetor with that little button. So this one, we're going to do it the other way. When we get everything done, we'll fill it with gas and we'll put some fuel preservative in it. Okay. Put our cap back on. Snug that out.
I wonder if I was better at fixing a dryer because I actually use dryers, so whereas this machine is completely foreign to me.
Well, yes, it does make a difference as far as being comfortable to know what to do and where. So I'm just going to set that old oil under the way over here. Hopefully I don't kick it and spill oil everywhere. It's known to happen. So let's put our new oil in.
Okay, we have a funnel.
You got a funnel.
Oh, it's by the pan.
Oh,
I was like, I know we have one of those.
usually hide stuff. So that's going to go there.
Just the view so everyone can see what we're doing. Right. Just there, a little plastic funnel.
So with this style of dipstick, and where the funnel fits fairly tight, it's hard for the oil to get down, or I'm sorry, it's harder for the air to get down fast when we're pouring. So I'll have to do this fairly slowly. Otherwise it'll back up and pour all over the place.
Trying not to make messes today. So that still has some color to it, but it's not the gross black
Yeah.
sludgy stuff that just came out the other.
It's kind of a nice golden.
And that's synthetic?
This is synthetic,
Engine oil?
yeah.
So does the entire bottle's worth need to get put in?
It's pretty close. It's pretty close. We'll get the majority of it in and then check it. Now, one thing to keep in mind, older engines like this, when they were made, came and used the SAE 30 oil, and we're converting this over to synthetic. And once you switch from SAE to synthetic, you're now committed to using synthetic all the time. If you were to try and go back to using SAE oil after synthetic's been in it, you'll actually wind up causing some harm to the engine. So now that we've made the switch, we're synthetic all the way. I'm just going to take our dipstick now, check our oil level. So most people are familiar with dipsticks, whether it's on your car or whether it's for your lawn and garden. You can see that there's little serrated markings for
Okay, and that's showing.
where the height of the oil should be. So it goes down in like that, so your oil level should be up to here.
Just a little further this way.
There we
We're yeah, got a
There you go.
two-camera system going here, folks.
Yeah. Anyway, most folks who deal with maintenance on their equipment understand the idea of the dipstick and the markings that are on it. So we're just going to slip the dipstick in, put it down, take it back out, and see where our oil level is.
And it should have a little glisten to it if it's.
Yeah, so you can kind of see where the
Zoom out a little here.
sort of see where our oil is on the dipstick. So it's actually right at the full mark. When it's nice and clear like this, it's a little harder to see. When it's old and dirty and black, it shows
So
up
if we'd
right
done
easy.
a test dip before we emptied it, it would have shown the.
Oh, you would have seen it really easy. But anyway, trust me that is right at the full mark. So we're good. That's the oil change. So we've done basically some of the basic maintenance on small engine on the blower. So that's great. We now have a new spark plug. We've got new oil. We're going to, we know the starter works good. We're going to be filling it with fuel and putting some fuel stabilizer in it when we're all finished up. So now we want to go through the rest of the blower and make sure everything's the way it should be. So I'm going to take the cover off where the belts are. I've already taken the screws out. And now I'm going to physically examine the belts. Make sure they're not cracked or split, they're not frayed, and I'm also going to check my adjustment. So my drive belt, which is a narrow one, it's usually always in the back closest to the engine. This belt runs all the time that the engine's running. It's turning the whole drive assembly anytime that engine's running. It's not moving the machine because we haven't engaged the drive. The front one is your Auger belt, and that one sits here loose until you pull down on your lever, moving the idler in, and tightens that up. So we want to make sure that that's nice and tight. If it's not, we're going to adjust the cable so it puts more tension on that belt. But that adjustment right now is just perfect. Now, you know if you tightened it up too much, so if you have your machine running, after you've made your adjustment, you have your machine running, you engage it, your auger turns, everything's great. You release the lever, And if the auger continues to run while you release the lever, you have your belt too tight, because that's not safe. There's no way you want to have any of that, those augers or impeller turning when that engine's running if the control is in the off position. So that just means you got a little bit too tight, so you just want to loosen that off. So the belts on this one are good and they're adjusted properly. So the next thing I'm going to take a look at is the front of the machine.
What are we calling the front, where the bucket is? Or
Yeah, where the
okay.
bucket is.
Back this way.
Now you can see this bucket is in terrible shape. It's paint's falling off it. It's all rusty. It needs to get cleaned up and new paint. That's just not good. So that's going to be our summer project. But what I want to do is do an inspection. I want to check and make sure that my shear pins are all in place.
So how many of those should we have?
Well, that's a great question because it varies from style of machine. This one has 4 augers, independent augers, so there's 4 pins.
Okay.
Now, these pins are called shear pins, and they're called that for a reason because they're designed, if you jam up any of these augers, say you pick up a rock,
Newspaper under the snow.
newspaper, when there used to be Christmas catalogs, you know, they deliver them at night. It was snowed overnight. It'd be buried in the snow. You'd be out there blowing the snow, happy as a clam, and all of a sudden this thing would jam up and clog them right up. But if you hit a rock, one of these pins will probably shear off. So if that shears off, please replace it with another shear bolt. If you just use a regular bolt, then there's no protection for the snowblower if you hit another big rock and jam it up, because that bolt won't shear. That means this is going to take all the strain as well as the whole drive system. And believe me, with 8 horsepower, driving that impeller at full speed, if you jam that up and that can't break free, you're going to damage something else. So only use proper shear bolts.
So if one shears off, do the rest keep running, or does it stop the whole thing?
No, you're right. If one shears off, everything else keeps running.
Okay.
And you don't usually know you've got a problem until you go down your next row of blowing snow and it winds up pushing a trail of snow out ahead of it because it can't pull it in. So you pretty well know that you've got a problem with your augers. The other thing you want to do is inspect your impeller. That's this guy. And you're really just looking to make sure that nothing's bent and that there's no way any of these 3 wings are possibly bent enough that they're touching or scraping the housing. It seems funny to think something of this caliber and strength of metal would bend, but I've seen that happen. A rock's been pulled in, it's gotten right in here and it jams up. And again, with 8 horsepower or 10 or 12, whatever your blower is, it will bend those impellers. And that's not a lot of fun to change if you have to. But you just want to take a look and make sure that they're in good condition. It's a great time to inspect your gearbox, just to make sure that there's oil or the grease not leaking out of it. If it has, then you're going to have to address that issue because you just don't want that gearbox running with lubrication. So that's pretty well everything in there you need to consider as part of your inspection before you put it away. If you find there's something wrong, then now's the time to address it. So the next piece we want to look at is the actual drive train. So that's going to be from back here. I'm going to stand this guy up on his nose.
See the underbelly of the beast.
Yep. Now, if you've got, if you have a blower that the gas tank is full, this isn't a good idea because it'll gas will pour over that vented cap. You just want to plan a little bit.
So it's fine that we just refilled all the oil. But
Yeah, the
gas
oil
is the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gas is the one that will give you the grief. We're just going to rip this cover off. that's where all the magic happens. So I was mentioning earlier about the drive belt. So when the engine's running and that drive belt is moving all the time, it's actually turning this disc. So whenever the engine's running, it's turning. And when you engage your drive to make it move, holds up this plate that's being rotated by the engine, and it's driving this wheel. This is your friction disc. So when you adjust your direction or your speeds, it's moving your friction disc from into the center to the outside, changing your speeds, or it's going over past the middle, and that's what gives you reverse. So this needs to be able to slide as easy as this is. Now this shaft is nicely lubricated. It's got a coating of grease on it. If yours is dry, or you're seeing signs of it rusting, you'll want to clean that rust off and apply just a little bit of grease. Because once they rust up and corrode, then you'll find it's really hard to shift, and you'll just be fighting with your blower the whole time. The other thing to look at is the rubber on your friction disc. You want to inspect it to look for any cracks, splits, or chunks that are out of it. Chunks out of it, you got to change it. You got to change that rubber. And on this one, it comes as just the rubber. You can change it separate from the metal piece. Other makes you wind up having to change the whole assembly. But it's not a horrible job, but this is a normal wear part. So if you find that it's missing chunks, if there's a few hairline cracks, you're probably okay for another season, but if there's pieces missing, you've got to change it. The other thing to keep in mind, if you're greasing any of these shafts, do not get any grease or oil on that rubber. If you do, it winds up being soaked into the rubber, and when you go to ask it to move ahead or move backwards, it's going to slip. So that rubber's got to be nice and dry. So when you're putting your grease on, just make sure you don't get any on there. As well, this disc, you want to clean it up a little bit, make sure it's nice and dry and clean, so you're not getting anything on the friction disc. So it's pretty easy to check. Now, something that not a lot of people do, but I make a point to do, and that's just because I serviced a lot of these machines. This is your axle right here, and on either side is a bearing that axle goes through. Now, those will wear. They're typically, on this caliber machine, it's an oil impregnated bearing. Some upper end machines, you'll actually find ball bearings, but these will wear. And in order to change them, you need to be able to get the wheels off. Most people never take their wheels off unless they've got a problem, such as flat tire or something with the gear case. So if you do need to do any kind of repair in here, and you need to be able to move that axle out of there, and you can't get your wheels off, now you've got a very expensive repair. You've got to actually wind up cutting that shaft and take them somewhere where somebody can press the axle out of the wheel. And if that doesn't work, then you wind up having to replace the axle in both wheels, and that gets really expensive. So all you really need to do is, when you're doing your checkup before you put it away, simply make this as part of your maintenance. Take your wheel nut off, pull your wheel off. And that came off really easy. And trust me, that's not the way it works if you don't do this on a yearly basis. So you're going to want to take that off. This is a spacer. Take that off. Now you can see how much play is in that bearing.
So is that good or bad?
This is not super bad. It's got some wear, it's got some play, but it'd be good for another season. If this was much more worse, then we would need to change those bearings.
So if it's really, really wiggly.
Yeah,
Okay.
if it's like bang, 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 but that's about half worn out. But you wouldn't have to rush to change them at this point. If it's beyond that, you're going to need to change those bearings. So you can see you would need to pull that axle shaft off, and you can't do that if you can't get the wheels off. So take those few extra minutes before you store your machine, pull your wheels off, clean up the shaft if it's rusty, and put some lubricant on it. I tend to use a grease that, this is actually a waterproof grease. They use it in the bottom end of outboard motors. Any grease will do. You'll notice I didn't ask you to do this.
I appreciate it. We're learning. So if you needed to put air in these tires and you don't have a compressor at home, can you just take them off the machine and bring them to the garage? And do it that way?
Yep.
So I guess that's a good way to take them on and off each season and make sure they're.
Yeah, for sure. Now that's a good point you bring up is your tires. These ones typically take about 20 pounds pressure. So that's 20 pounds is the ideal pressure in the cold. Now in summer, depending on how hot the temperatures are in your area, these tires in going from say, freezing point up to maybe 70, 80, 90 degrees temperature in the summer, the air pressure in these tires is going to get quite high. It's actually going to go from about 20 pounds to about 30 pounds just because the heat makes the air inside expand. So it's not a bad idea to let some air out, drop the pressure down a little bit. These are 20, I usually drop mine down to 15 for the summer. And then come winter, I'm going to pump them back up to their 20. But again, you can adjust tire pressures.
The bearing?
I forgot my spacer.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Feels like there's a thing on the left side.
Yeah. So this is just basically a hard plastic, almost a rubbery type of material that's a spacer. Some machines, depending on the size of their axles, may be a short spacer, some of them are long, like this one. If you have a blower that's track drive, it's still going to have a bearing of this style on its axle. So instead of wheels, it's got a sprocket on here that's going to drive your track system. You want to do the same thing. You want to take, loosen up your tracks, take your sprockets off or your wheels off that drive your treads, and do the same kind of cleanup and lubrication. It just saves you a whole lot of grief if at some point you have to take that thing apart.
With this drive system that we're looking at, as long as like visually everything's okay, this isn't there's not stuff that needs to be done every season in there.
There's really nothing other than everything's good on this one, but I'd be just mainly checking the condition of that friction disc and making sure that the shafts are clean and dry so that your shift mechanism moves freely. The other thing I'm going to want to look at is these cables that are used to engage your drive and your cable that's used to engage your auger. I put a little bit of lubrication on them just to make sure that the cables don't bind up and that everything rolls nice and smooth. If you find these cables here where they go through the idler wheels are cracked or split, you're going to want to think about ordering new ones because they will break on you. And if the cable breaks, then you're stuck. You're either going to lose your drive or you're going to lose your ability to blow snow. I'm sorry.
Like are those as easy to change over as the pull start cord?
Yes, actually even easier.
Nice.
They just undo from your lever and then you just feed them through. This one has a spring on it where it hooks into. So they're actually quite easy to change. They're not a big issue at all. And your owner's manual has all that in it as far as how to adjust it and change those cables.
But again, not a yearly task. Just
not a yearly task with that. Now I'll typically, on my machines, anything that's a pivot point, anywhere where you've got a shaft that needs to move when it's supposed to, I'll usually give it a little bit of spray with lubricant. Even these little wheels where my cables go, I'll give them a little spray lube. And that just makes it so much easier. Do it now. So we'll put this guy back down. I guess I should put the cover on, shouldn't I? So you can see there's not a lot to do. It's just basic maintenance. But taking the time to go through and check some of these things that we've talked about today just mean that when you need to use your blower next year, it's going to be ready to go without a whole lot of fuss. Especially where our weather's changing so fast these days that you'll get surprised. You don't think you're going to need your blower, so soon the next thing you know, you get a yard full of snow, and you need your machine to basically go the moment you want it to, and not have to mess around with all this stuff.
Most of this has just been checking to make sure everything's in good. The only thing we've actually replaced was oil and a spark plug. So
That's
far.
right. That's right. And snow blowers typically don't have air filters, so that is pretty well all the maintenance. As far as normal maintenance, thing you've got to replace.
Air filters are easy to change. That one I know how to do on other pieces of equipment.
Yeah. All the stuff that we talked about today, you'll find in your owner's manual. And if you don't have your owner's manual and you want to know how to do some of this, if you go to our website and go through the repair help or look up a particular part if you're looking for the bearings or your belts, and most often you're going to find a video that's going to show you how to check it, how to replace it, and how to adjust it. So we try to give you as much information. Oh, well, there. Even my watch wants to help.
Is this where? Yeah, this is where serial number, model number.
Yep. So the model number is the real critical thing when it comes to looking up parts for the blower itself. So yeah, armed with your model number, go to our site, and you can put it in, and you'll find a parts breakdown, and it'll show you everything you need. And you can actually order the part right from there as well. That makes it really easy. And we don't use aftermarket parts. We only supply OEM parts, factory service parts. So the same people that make the parts for this machine make the parts that we're going to provide you with. So that's pretty much it for that. But like I say, it's all pretty easy. It's straightforward maintenance. And that little bit of time, we've been less than an hour. And yes, there's not a whole lot we had to do to it other than doing an inspection. But if you do that inspection once a year, your machine's going to work when you need it to work, and it's going to be pretty trouble-free. Yes, for the carburetor.
And then the debate we started the session with, store it with a full tank of gas or store it dry?
Myself, my machine, I fill it with gas and I put fuel additive into it to keep the gas. So as you know, regular style gasoline has a shelf life. It deteriorates over time, and it deteriorate basically meaning it loses its ability to explode when it's in your cylinder. So as your gas ages, it doesn't give you as much of a bang as it does when it's fresh. But fuel stabilizer will keep it for those months to get you from when you put it away to the fall when you need to bring it out, start it up and try it again.
Got a question asking if this is a Craftsman. I'm just looking at the label saying it's MTD.
It's manufactured by MTD. This one is under the yard machines, but yes, you definitely would find that under Craftsman. Craftsman used a lot of MTD. They used a lot of NOMA product as well.
Okay, so related
Yeah.
brands.
Yeah, so it's manufactured by MTD. The engine on this one is Tecumseh. Unfortunately, Tecumseh's not making their engines anymore, but these Snow King engines were some of the most reliable, tough engines that were ever made. So fuel stabilizer, let's put a little bit in. Again, most of these bottles of fuel stabilizer are designed for automotive, for the size of the gas tank your vehicle would have. So you only need to put a small amount in for that size of tank. We'll just top it up with regular fuel. Doesn't have to be high test. These older engines just want regular gas. We'll put our covers back on. One of the other things I tend to do is on my chute. This is a plastic chute. It's got a plastic ring. On the metal ones, these would freeze and jam up, and I would lubricate all in around here with that same kind of grease I put on the axles, so that when it got wet and cold, that it couldn't freeze, so that I'd still be able to turn this no matter what. And the other thing I do is I'll clean out the chute, wipe it out so it's nice and clear away from dirt. And I'll either use a car wax, put a coating on it, or spray silicone. Some people actually use WD-40. They'll do a mixture of WD-40, a little bit of water, put it in a spray bottle, and they'll spray the inside of the chute. Some people actually coat the outside bucket with WD-40 just to keep it from moisture affecting the paint and the metal. But having this nice and clean and smooth, and the coating on it means when you go out in your first snow blow, that snow is going to come right over the chute, not stick.
So if someone doesn't have a garage or shed, is a tarp, if it needs to be stored outside, is a tarp fine, or does that trap moisture? And
well, a tarp is never going to be completely tight form fitting, so there's going to be room for air to get in. So you're not going to get so much of a moisture issue. Snowblower covers are great for even in the wintertime when you're storing and not using it. You get it out on your deck or wherever. But yeah, summertime, put a snowblower cover on it. They just fit nicer. But if not, put a tarp over it just to keep the bulk of that rain and stuff from, getting down on the machine, and just help keep it last longer. And less chance of it being a problem for you come fall in the winter.
would you cover it over if it's inside or in a structure?
I do with mine only because I want to keep the dust off. I kind of treat my blower like I do my cars, so I like them to be clean and shiny and work when you need them to. But not everybody has the time or the energy, but ideally if they're inside, they're fine. If you want to put a cover to keep them clean, that's cool too. So that's pretty well everything you need to do in order to keep your blower working great.
You want to give us a quick summary of everything we covered here?
Sure. So we kind of go around. I always start typically with the engine. I'm going to check my pull cord to make sure it's in good condition. I'm going to check my oil to see if it needs to be changed, it's at the right level. I'm going to replace my spark plug. I'm going to inspect my belts and the adjustments on them, make sure they're right. And if all that's good, then I'm going to move on to the front end of the machine, and I'm going to inspect my augers and impeller, make sure my shear bolts are in there, the proper type of shear bolt. And if all of that is good, nothing has to be straightened out or replaced, then I'll move towards tipping the machine up and looking at the gearbox, making sure it shifts fine, checking those axle bearings, checking to make sure I get the wheels off when I want them to come off, and as well I'll be able to check my tire pressures. If all that is good, then I'm going to make sure that all of my other pivot points are well lubricated and moving freely. And then I'm going to just kind of examine the chute, make sure that it's operating and adjusted properly, and clean it and give it a coating so that it's ready to go for the next snow season. And that's pretty much it.
Now we hope it's truly spring and we don't have any more snowstorms.
That's right. That's right. But spending the time like we did today, if you do that with your machine, come winter, you won't have any surprises. you're going to be able to pull that out, whip the cover off, put on the choke, prime the carburetor, give it 1 or 2 pulls, and you're away to blow snow.
Awesome. If anyone has specific questions, we can stay online a couple more minutes, but otherwise we'll be back in a couple weeks to get your lawnmower ready for the season.
Sounds good.
Which will be a lot of, I suppose, the opposite of what we did today.
Pretty much. So yeah, so by all means, drop into any of our lives every second week. We pretty well do these on one piece of equipment or another. But we'll be able to answer any of your questions. It doesn't have to be on a particular product we're working on that day. Whether it's your home appliances, your power tools, your outdoor equipment, we can help you with all of that. And if we don't have an answer to your question, we'll get it for you and give us some information how to reach you, and we'll reply to you outside of the log. So what do you think, Sarah? You'll be all set to look after your snow blower?
If I ever find the need to plow out the parking garage, I think I've got it covered.
Well, maybe next year we'll get you blowing snow out here so you can get to see how much fun it is.
I think that would be entertaining for everyone else.
All right then.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks very much for tuning in, and we hope we've been able to give you a little bit of guidance on how to look after your snowblower. So have a great rest of your week. Thank you. Bye now.